Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another episode of Merkaba Chakras podcast. Today, we talk to author Brian Scott. Now, Brian has been studying consciousness and figuring out how to hack reality so that he manifests the best parallel reality for himself. In his book, The Reality Revolution, Brian explains his process for how and why we may choose to jump parallel realities. Now, I know from my hypnosis clients and myself that we play with our own personal Mandela effects to get to the highest version of reality in the multiverse. So we get the privilege today to pick Brian's bag of tricks for hacking reality. So Brian, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this
Oh, me
because,
too.
I love talking about consciousness. And I love talking about awakening and ascension, but rarely do I actually get to pick somebody's brain about reality hacking and jumping parallel realities. So this one's a treat, always going to be a treat for me as well.
Well, I'm interested too. You have a focus on Merkaba and sacred geometries as well. It's something that I'm super interested in, and you've also hypnotized some people and got some information. So hey, I'm excited too. This is gonna be fun.
Well, maybe we'll do a podcast trade.
Yeah,
I'd
that
be
sounds
happy to.
good.
I'd be happy to. Now, Brian, as much as I know that not all people that we talk to in our book interviews are
Mhm.
aware of jumping between multiple parallel realities.
Right.
And you probably come across that, and I've come across that as well in
Mhm.
the space. So, however, I think some people do play it off because it challenges them too much.
It's true.
And it is authors like you and I who write books on parallel reality shifts that are I think, the leading edge experiencers of the shift as we go further into the fifth dimension, which many indigenous cultures like my tribe of the Hmong tribe and
Mhm.
Buddhism believe that we're already in the early stages of right now. So before we dig into your reality hack tricks, can you tell your story for how you got into this work in the first place?
Well, I was really struggling. I was at a point in my life where I'd lost the love of my life, and my business was one of those horrific businesses where you had to work 20 hours a day and crouching at my desk all the time. And my kids weren't around anymore. It was just anything that you could imagine, like in a movie, like all the bad stuff happens. It was just all accumulating and mounting. And I really felt like I had lost all hope and desire, and life wasn't fun anymore. And, I experimented with meditation and consciousness, but never really had really focused on it and really tried to work on it. So in that moment, the only thing that I had was my own consciousness. And so I said, if I can change my consciousness, if I can take all that stuff I've read that people talk about, like in The Secret and these other things, maybe I can change my reality. And so I took this, and I knew it was my one last chance, because what I was facing seemed hopeless. It would be no way I could be able to overcome all of these problems. So I started intensely meditating, experimenting, and I started to see these changes occurring in my reality. Big changes, things that were unlikely and uncommon. I found love. I was able to change my business, so I wasn't working 20 hours a day. I was working an hour a day, getting the same income as before, and meeting new friends, and all these amazing changes started happening. And then I had, as I talk about in my book, there was a home invasion, and some people came into my house. I was watching my favorite sports team and football team, and they one thing led to another, and they shot at me, and the bullet bounced off my back, and they came and said, sent me to the hospital. And I came back, and there was this moment I realized that my house wasn't the same. There were objects in my house that I had not seen before. There were people contacting me that I had not talked to since high school, and they're acting like we talked last week. And there's things like there's as in my neighborhood, where I would run across the lot. When I would run, I wouldn't run around the sidewalk. I'd run across the lot, and there's a building there, not a new building, an old building. There was all these unusual reality shifts around me. I began to get really concerned. Perhaps I was insane. There was a post-traumatic stress disorder. My dad was sort of a scientist, the way I'd been raised, and my mind automatically thought something's wrong with me. So I went to the doctor, and they said, nothing's wrong with you. And, I started, okay, there has to be, I had to explain this to myself. I had known about and had explored the idea of parallel reality shifts already in my meditations, but now I needed to prove it. I needed to know and understand what had happened to me, because the reality I was in was different than what it was before.
Right. So,
yeah,
this is my everyday, but for people new to coming into this, they would maybe do the fun stuff like the logo changes and the Berenstain Bears
right,
and the Ed McMahon Publishers Clearinghouse and the commercial stuff,
right,
because it's easy to kind of play off. But that's just
right.
kind of the very light teaser level of
Hmm.
shifting between parallel realities. But then as you do more of your inner work and as you do more of your meditation and dive further into consciousness, your consciousness is all of a sudden um, flipping the script on you, and you're getting your own what they call personal Mandela effects or personal
Yes,
changes in your reality. So let's rewind so that people understand
sure.
this, because I ask these questions because I'm familiar with it, but I get clients who fly across the states during a pandemic to make sense of the personal reality shift because it is blowing their mind too much and they
Yeah,
don't know who to go to. So if we can bring some information that they can possibly relate to that can help them in their life and in how they shift realities and make sense of it, then they know that they don't need to be medicated. They don't need to go to the sane asylum. They don't need
right,
any of that kind of stuff. And they know that they're basically leading edge experiencers of reality, and everybody else
right.
is kind of slow to follow. So, um, going into your story for how you kind of got to your, in Buddhism we call your awakening, where you woke
Hmm.
up to the nature of reality
Right.
through doing your inner work. What were some of the types of meditation or consciousness techniques that you were working with that started to kind of unravel reality to you?
One of the reasons I think I was able to notice this is I was open to it, and I was aware and looking for it. I think a lot of people are experiencing these shifts and they don't even think twice about it. They haven't read about it. They put their keys on the table and then they find them on their desk and they just say, "Oh, I must have just put them on the desk." But I started exploring reality transurfing. Frederick Dotson has an amazing book on parallel universes of self. Bert Goldman has an incredible book on quantum jumping, and I started every single book that was possible out there, anything on multidimensionality and physics. I started reading this. And so I started incorporating these concepts into my meditations. If you understand quantum physics, you understand that reality is basically created by light. And then what we're looking at, objects around us, are different vibrations of light. And when we, on a quantum scale, when we look at a light passing with the double slit experiment, that way back we realized that light is changed by our own observation. When we're not observing it, it becomes wave. When we're observing it, it becomes particle. And so I started really taking these concepts to heart in my meditations and using my focused attention and awareness, using these concepts to then use visualizations and techniques, uh, feeling techniques, Neville Goddard techniques, so that I was living in these realities that weren't in my own reality now, but I was going into these deep meditations and I was imagining and going into my imagination and really going deep, feeling it, feeling it. That was the big shift for me when I realized it wasn't just what I saw with my mind, it was what I was feeling. And to understand that when I feel something, it's the same as vision. All we're doing with our five senses is that we're taking in information. So I get information through my eyes, which we all depend on. That's what we see. I'm getting information from my ears, and I'm getting information from the smell. I'm getting information from taste, and then our feelings. And I went beyond what they talk about in law of attraction. And I said, okay, if I want this reality, what is it going to taste like? What's it going to feel like? What is it going to smell like? What is the actual state of consciousness that I would be in? What would I be remembering? What would my memories be? My memories might be a little bit different. I really started playing with the whole concept as if I was an actor in a play. And I would put myself in these long states. And so as this happened, the fabric of reality started to shift and become elusive to me. So that when this event happened, I was already at a place multidimensionally where I could just jump into other realities, and it just kind of happened. I escaped into a reality where I lived through this incident, and I was opening myself up. There was a portion of me that I realized, this higher self of my own, that was protecting me from big changes, that was worried. Hey, I at least I felt like as I started to communicate and think about it and understand it, there was this higher protected self of me that was limiting what big changes I could experience in my reality for my own sanity. And then I started communicating with my higher self and saying, hey, I'm open to these changes. I'm willing to accept major big reality shifts in my life. And then I would live deeply in these states of consciousness for a prolonged period of time.
Right, right.
And
And you did
yeah,
that through meditation, like what, or just out, even because you're not going to meditate 24/7.
right.
Right, but
I
you kept that feeling in your heart of that's the frequency that you would hold
right.
on to. So
I
like if
kind of
you
saw,
were
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
so like if you were trying to make sense of this and kind of break it down for people. So
Mhm,
for you, if you were thinking of okay, I want my business or my finances to have this certain kind of outcome.
mhm,
I'm open to whatever outcome the universe sends to me, but I have this feeling, and that's the feeling that I'm
right.
going to hold on to. So that's the frequency my heart is going to hold on to about
Mhm,
that situation or about this situation in a relationship. I'm going to hold on to that frequency, not the other frequency that's more low vibe, that everything's falling apart and I feel like crud. I'm going to hold on
right.
to the higher frequency. So you
Mhm,
are feeling and trying to hold on to that resonance in your heart of that reality, of that higher frequency reality with that higher outcome. So that's what
right.
the technique that you were doing.
Well, I found there was a two-step process that was involved. The first is that I would look for potentials in what I call the space of variations, which is discussed in reality transurfing. There's this quantum field that has all of the infinite possibilities. There's the one where our interview stops right now. There's the one where, my computer breaks down. There's millions and billions. They're all, and they exist as sort of potentials. So I would initially uh, try to find the potential, this actual thing that exists in the quantum field. And then I would try to actualize it. And so the process of actualizing it was in the meditation, I would act, but then it was almost like an identity shift would occur. And even though I would meditate for 20 or 30 minutes about it, I would walk around as if it was the reality I was in. I was I was like an actor, but I was in a movie all the time. And it sounds kind of crazy, but that's what the actualization process was the big part. It was like, okay, this new reality where the large sums of money are coming to me easily and quickly, and I'm happy and financially free, and everything is working out perfectly. It feels like a holiday every day. I started feeling that, even though their outside circumstances had nothing to do with that. I was in a terrible house and everything was, but as I did that, there was a sort of bridge that started of incidents that would start to occur that would connect me to that original space of potential that was there. And it was like this link started to occur. And the more I acted out and felt it, they would join together. And it's like I was one river here, and there was another river, and these two rivers would flow and eventually meet. And
Right.
the more I acted, it was just me like rowing the boat towards the actual reality where it existed.
Right, right. Like another way that I typically understand that technique is like in Buddhism, And again, lots of traditions have
Right, right.
very similar techniques. So, but each part of your life, you have a different version of yourself. You at kindergarten is different at first grade, and
True.
the first grade is different at middle school, and on and on and on. It's different at when you're a senior, etc.
Hmm.
So you are living the version of you in a certain state, and your consciousness is living a certain state. But if you wanted to match up to a reality that had a higher version of you that had different potentials, it would typically feel what that version of you would typically be like. Maybe that person is um, more focused, more creative, spends more of its time on kind of self-development, more confident. And so you'll pick those aspects and then like put that suit on or put that clothes on, and
Right.
then just kind of wear that outfit. And before you know it, you just jumped multiple layers of yourself into another version of yourself that now you are wearing full time. And
Exactly.
so reality has no choice but to mirror what you are and give you the matching reality. So it sounds that was kind of like what you were doing
Hmm.
through these different techniques was basically um, mirroring the version and the outcome
Yes.
that you preferred, but you were open to whatever that outcome was going to be because you were open to let the universe figure it out for you. So
Right.
what were some of the personal changes in your reality? Like, can you give us some examples of the very first ones that started making you wonder, like, what's going on?
Oh, well, in my old reality, I had this belief system where I was afraid to become too successful because I had this lodged in my belief system that if I did, that I would drink too much, I would party too, it would always end up in some kind of terrible failure. And there, I realized I was protecting myself. So I had eliminated this reality. And then I started having people contacting me, events, contacting businesses, things happening, that too many coincidences that happened. It wouldn't happen normally. These things, phone calls, emails, things, people were contacting me that I had not contacted before. And I would have things like that come up all the time. And it was exciting at first to see. And
Right, to see the
yeah,
synchronicities that were
these
happening in your
amazing
life.
synchronicities.
Okay.
I started to see where the river was flowing ahead of time. I could feel it. I was moving with this flow of alternatives into the space I was going, and it was almost a daily, hourly thing where I was getting
Right.
constant synchronicities, and as I moved towards it, greater things would happen. Yeah.
Right, right. And that is so important for people to understand, because your experience of when you start get into the inner work and you start raising your frequency and you start matching the reality that's a higher vibe, the version of yourself that's higher vibe, and start walking that that energy before it manifests. Synchronicity is just basically the universe putting puzzle pieces together one after another that fit perfectly, and all you
Perfect.
got to do is flow with the energy and kind of just naturally take that low hanging fruit to the next low
Right.
hanging fruit and so forth. So synchronicity in this space becomes your everyday. Of course that was going to happen. Why wouldn't it happen? So
Exactly. Yeah.
now synchronicity is happening in this early space, and you're no longer questioning it. You're just kind of almost letting it surprise and be grateful for it
Hmm.
happening, whatever way it forms. What were the big changes in your reality that all of a sudden kind of made you have step back?
Uh, Well, the big one that like I said, I had a business where I couldn't even sleep 8 hours a day. I was responsible for everything, and it was going to be impossible. It was one of those businesses where I had to do everything, and all of the work that was required for me to take care of my kids or anything. And I'm contacted by two people after I imagined, hey, I'm working 4 hours a week, and I imagine that, really felt and started living that. Even though I'm sitting there working, I'm still trying to imagine and live in this existence. And then I had three people contact me uh, out of the blue, and then another person that knew it, and they were like, "Hey, I have this specialty. I can work. Do you know of anybody that where I could get a job?" They didn't even know that I had done it. And it was bizarre that they had contacted me. And I'm like, yeah, you can work for me and do this. And it was like, it was a kind of business where I would never have been able to go on and find employment. It was such a very unique thing. It was such lucky thing. And then they were like, yeah, I know someone else. Next thing you know, I have all these people working for me, super cheap, from places where I could, it was very affordable. And they're working for me, doing all of the work that I was doing before. And it almost happened within a week. Then all of a sudden, and it was these phone contact, and then normally I might have just ignored it, but I know I was living in that reality, and I expected something to happen because I was in this identity, and then I knew somebody was going to contact me. That was a big thing, is people contacting me out of the blue. It
Right,
was the
right.
thing that I found really shocking and interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've come across that myself, where clients are like, how did you find, because I don't advertise, how did you find my hypnosis practice? And they said,
Right.
I turned off my computer and your website was up.
Right.
Or my Facebook crashed and all of a sudden one of your blog articles was up from like
It's
2011.
amazing.
And
It's
so it's
amazing.
basically they're usually trying to get into space, or they're in the space, and it's usually their higher self making those connections for them, and
Mhm.
almost kind of doing a force restart on their computer and just putting up what they need to go, oh, what is this? And they would
Yeah.
and that's typically how, because sometimes they would come to you and be like, I don't know how I found you, but somehow it just came into my radar,
Mhm.
and that's how I got you. so, so the higher self, the consciousness, has funny ways of just cutting through the BS and just connecting the dots very quickly. Um, so I've seen that as well. Now, when you had your the burglary,
Mhm.
when somebody broke into your home and they shot you in the back, you don't have any gun wounds on your back when it happened? Did the hospital see
Well,
any of that?
Well, I have a tiny little dent on my back, and I didn't want to lose it because it started healing. The reason the bullet bounced is that I had shut a window and they shot through the window, and I built a Sri yantra all around the bullet wound, where the bindu is right
Oh
there
yeah.
in the middle on my back. But so I wouldn't lose it, because I saw it was a little red dot for a while, and I could feel something hit my back, and so I've always kept that tattoo on my back, just so I would never forget the exact part where it was. And so
Yeah.
I've even had moments in my meditations where I had done the tattoo later, and it had some sort of later on it created a force field in my past, and so I was like being guided to do the tattoo now. And so
That's funny. I love that.
another thing, I've had moments where I've gone in meditation to the moment where it happened to warn myself, because I remember hearing like, hey, you need to get up, you need to do these. And so then, okay, well, maybe I did go back in time, because we understand all of time exists at the same time if you study physics. And so it might have been because I did that. I slipped into the reality of that when that happened, warned myself, and then so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Those, when you get into space, those funny inklings, do happen, where you're all of a sudden you'll just hear or have this strong feeling like, I shouldn't go in there. I don't know why. I'm just not going to do that. And it's revealed later on why. And actually, I'll tell you a quick story about those weird
Mhm.
inklings that you shouldn't avoid. I actually have a client who, when she was a child, her and her best friend at the time went to play at a friend's house, typically. And this one time they went to stop at another friend's house, and when they opened the door, she had the gift of seeing everybody's aura, and she saw all this red around their aura, and it just really scared her, and she didn't want to go inside, and she made a big fuss. And so her and her friend didn't go and play with this other friend at her house, and they went back home. And 3 or 4 hours later, before she went home, the parents at her friend's house turned on the TV and were watching the news. And that family that they were at earlier, that they didn't go in to play with, was all murdered.
Oh
All murdered.
my
There was a
gosh.
serial killer that, for whatever reason, picked that house. And if they had gone in and played with their other friend, they would also had been a victim of the serial killer.
Wow.
And so it definitely saved her life. And I've had other clients who had said also they had the same kind of weird inkling and they just couldn't
Hmm.
get into an elevator and they left and that elevator fell and everybody in the
You know,
elevator.
those hunches are part of these parallel realities, and the people that didn't get into the building during 9/11, that don't get
Mm-hmm.
on the train when there's a train accident, or the plane when it happens all the time. And I think what's happening is you are aware of all the parallel realities, and this is also talked about in reality transurfing. In some cases, people are aware that in another reality they died on that in that plane crash, that they died when they walked into that house, and there's a part of your soul that knows because it happened already. So when we
Mm-hmm.
start listening to our intuition, it's not some magical thing. It is we're accessing the quantum field.
Well, let me
Right.
ask you something because I had this what they would call deja vu, where something's happening and you know exactly what's happening as it's happening. Like, why am I having the same rewind? Um, I had somebody show me a piece of art that I already knew what she was going to make. And I already knew that she was going to make a certain drawing during this activity that a bunch of us were doing.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, am I having a deja vu moment where I'm living the same experience over again?
Right.
What did I do? Did I mess up and then start all over again? What can you explain something like that where people have those kind of reality rewinds?
Exactly. I think that we are, once we are really, because you're meditating a lot, once you start really tuning into your reality, you are aware of all of these moments. That's what deja vu to me is. It's access to these other parallel realities. It can be in the future and past. You might have experienced it in a dream or some other timeline, and that's what I think's happening, is that you're aware of it from another parallel reality. That
But I'm
deja vu.
aware of it. I'm aware of physically experiencing it in my waking consciousness,
Right.
that I've already experienced this experience in my waking consciousness state
Hmm.
already, and I'm doing it again. Or I'll say I'll watch some,
So
and
there's.
I have clients who said this too, like they'll be watching a program on the news and say, "Oh, well, this is what happened. I already watched that." And they're like, "No, this just started to happen."
Right. I honestly think we're slipping back into the same reality and re-experiencing it. I think that
Why?
I think that when we understand that time is non-linear, so uh, it's like a big gigantic lake, and everything that's happening is happening. So when you drop a pebble and it comes out in waves, right? Then it affects everything else. So what may be happening is that you may have just slipped somehow through your consciousness a few minutes past, a few minutes forward, and re-experience the same period of time. Some people, you know, it may happen more often than we may not be watching TV. We may be going for a walk, and our own level of consciousness uh, is a little bit different, and we don't aware of it. Now you're becoming more aware of it and you're starting to see it.
So I've had these experiences, and many of my clients in hypnosis have had these experiences where they feel like they're time traveling. That's the only way that they can understand it, because it
Hmm.
feels like they are time traveling forward in time a couple minutes or even a couple days or
Hmm.
months sometimes, and they don't know because
Hmm.
everything's very fluid in their reality and their experience. But then something comes up in their reality that they know exactly what's going to happen because they already experienced that, but it's new for everybody else but not for them. And so they don't really understand how they are almost traveling through time,
Hmm.
with their consciousness, almost like biolocation. Like in, yeah, you know, some of the stories of Buddha, the first Buddha, Gautama, he was known to biolocate between point A to point B in space,
Right.
or maybe even travel into certain times. He had gotten so good in his consciousness work that his Merkaba, his mandala, was so high frequency that it was able to utilize and almost play with time space. Now, many of
Absolutely.
my clients and myself are not at that level, but we get those inklings where we're kind of
Mm.
wondering, is that what's happening? Is some of these leading edge experiencers of reality shift jumping forward in time or backwards in time?
I believe that that's what's happening. I'm strongly convinced that there's a time aspect. Really good, a really good book to read is Frederick Dotson's book on time travel that he released. That's a fantastic book. Uh, it kind of opened up my eyes to it, and I started experimenting. But as I said before, time is like a lake. We all think that time is A equals B equals C, and it's moving in a straight line. But really, time is just all of time is happening at the same time in this present moment. All of the things that have ever happened to you are happening right now, and we're in this frame where we're moving in a linear time. But if we are able to go in consciousness, we can actually access these other times. We think it's a memory, but in many cases it's not a memory. And I think the more that we play around with this and the more the world starts to change, these multidimensional experiences, we are exploring time. I'm seeing it more and more. Neville Goddard, a famous mystic uh, from the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
he would do something called revision, where you go back and change something in your past, and people would report that as if it didn't happen. And and
Oh,
I
yeah.
I talk about that all the time. Like if you had some big argument with your husband at some point in time, you go back and just imagine that you had this really happy conversation, and then next thing you know, it's like they don't even remember that the conversation even happened. um,
Right, right. And let me ask you about that as well, because I know you said that when you were at the hospital after your big aha
mhm,
moment, you came back home and things in your house were different than it was. People were different than they were.
yes.
So was that your first realization that you shifted to another parallel reality where the things in your house are a bit different and the people are a little bit different?
Right. There was a plausible deniability before. Little changes would occur, but when this happened, it was such a big jump. Maybe there weren't very many other realities, that there was just too much that occurred. I do think that it was a big parallel reality quantum jump, because I had light fixtures in my house that I'd never bought, and things and items and objects that appeared. And so I think that we are constantly traveling through parallel realities. Some are bigger than others, and then in that particular moment, it was just obvious. And then other times, I could say, "Well, that's not true, or that didn't occur," or something like that. So,
Like a big building that all of a sudden shows
right, a
up.
big building that I think that there, in the way I see it, the way when I start to explore these realities, uh, when they make the argument everything is possible, that's true, and all realities are there. But there's I think that if you were to look above at all the realities, it's like a river. There's most of the realities kind of conform, even though parallel realities are possible. Most people are in the same reality most of the time. There might be 3 different realities, there might be 10 different realities. There's not trillions of realities. There was one reality where I lived through that event. In that reality, I had those light fixtures. There was a building up. And so it was like at that point, I had jumped into this reality, and there was no plausible deniability as far as I understood it, that I knew for sure because of that.
Right.
Another great person, Cynthia Sue Larson, has a book
Yep,
on
yep. Hmm.
reality shifts, and she talks about this concept pretty well. So,
Yes, yes, yes. These are all really, really good reads, and I recommend everybody read them because they are really good if you are having your personal. I pretty much would recommend reading any author that talks about parallel realities,
it's
any
true.
and all,
Yes.
because if you're having your own Mandela effects, your personal ones, and your own reality shifts, and there isn't very many people around you that can corroborate or go, give you some insight, um, and for sure that these are undeniable evidence that you have shifted into a different reality, then I would pretty much recommend reading anything you get your hands
Hmm.
on parallel realities, because everybody's perspective, tradition, culture has a little piece of insight, and
It's
one
true.
little piece of insight that you get in one book may be the key for you to help you navigate it a little bit more smoothly or make sense of it.
Well,
So because you are the
another
leading edge
interesting
experiencer.
Another interesting thing is, you may notice this, it's everywhere. It seems like that every movie I watch, they're talking about parallel realities. Every TV series,
We're attracting it. We're attracting it.
yeah, yeah. It seems I see it everywhere. People are talking about it all the time. Human beings are very interested in this concept.
Hmm.
It is very interesting. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So, like I've had, now I just kind of go with the flow. It doesn't trip me out so much. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, a new building, yay. Um, but I used to drive to work here in Seattle and park in the same spot for years, park in the
Hmm.
same spot. And then all of a sudden I came in one week and I park in my same spot, and there's these huge city block of a building that was never developed before. It's like they would never develop this huge city block of all these huge buildings in one
Hmm.
week.
In 1 week.
So it was undeniable.
Wow.
And I was like, I asked everybody, like, I don't know. And the people that you talk to sometimes almost either it's too weird and they avoid it talking about it because it challenges their belief system too much, or they recall it's new too, but they just kind of have that puzzle, like, I don't know when it showed up, but it just showed up and I just kind of pass it off and move on with my life because it's challenging my everyday too much. So and so I've seen that. I've seen huge Ferris wheels that no one in the building recognizes, but then I recognize it for the first time. And then everybody's like, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden, everybody is running to the window to look at the new Ferris wheel in Seattle.
Yeah.
And they're like looking up online. They're like, how come we never noticed this before?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, this huge brand new Ferris wheel that's going to open up next week has been up and has been building for quite some time, but nobody ever recognized it. Was
Hmm.
right there until somebody shifted to reality, saw it, pointed out, and then everybody else
I,
almost sudden shifted to that same reality and saw it. So it's almost like these leading edge experiencers of reality shifting. I don't say travel because you don't physically travel anywhere. You
right.
just change your energy, and all of a sudden, like an instant, you shift
Right.
to another.
Instantaneous.
You just like it's like changing from one channel to another. You just beep, and you're another one. You don't physically go anywhere. But it's almost like these leading edge experiencers of reality shifts are the ones who are tuning into these higher versions of
Hmm.
reality, and then the people that they're connected to or they're engaging with are um, going, "Oh, that sounds like a really good idea. What channel is that? Let me shift there too." It's almost like we're
Right.
showing people, hey, there's another reality here, and so people eventually, get to the same spot, and then you have what people call Mandela effects, where they go, well, did you remember seeing Shazam with growing up? Because I remember, and no, I never saw that. I saw, and they would go
Right.
back and forth and entertain each other with the commercial logos of Mandela effects, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, so which version were you from, and were you from this version and that version or whatever. But I think that's kind of how it's happening. I think these leading edge experiencers of consciousness are the ones who are kind of leading the way into higher vibe frequential realities. What is your thought on that? I mean, why is not everybody picking it up?
Right. I agree with you. I think that the first question, why isn't this happening to everybody? Why is it only happening to a few people? And that's the way that you've described is the way I've been able to rationalize it, is that a small number are leading edge experiencers, as you said, and they're tuning into these higher frequencies from one way or another. It could be an aspect of their personality, or for some reason they've tuned into these higher vibrations,
Mm-hmm.
and people get pulled into the river with them for this reality. They kind of move, or they're already there, and it's just you're just more aware of it. So you're seeing the thing that everybody just kind of is, because a lot of people, as you probably are aware, are just kind of walking through the world like zombies a little
Yeah,
bit.
they think there's one reality and they don't know
Right.
that reality is much more fluid.
Right. So they're not looking for the changes. You're looking for them because you are now aware of this, and this is something that you're seeing. And so when you start looking for stuff, you see it. I think a lot of people may not be aware that these big changes. They assume that there is only one reality, and so they'll immediately, part of their conscious mind will say, "Oh, that must have been already there all the time." And I just want to tell anybody that I didn't see this big Ferris wheel that just popped up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there are certain there. I think there's a certain personality type, but it's definitely with people that are opening themselves up, opening their consciousness, awakening, that they're seeing these changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it is a small number of people, but it is growing.
It is
Uh,
growing. 'Cause I know in Buddhism they call a Buddha the one who's awake within the matrix. We are awake within the matrix is reality. The Dharma is reality. So we're awake within the Dharma. And then our idea of ascension is just raising your frequency to whichever reality you want to be in, just matching that
right.
vibration. And that's, just kind of raising your energy field. And the more you raise your energy field, the more these six senses, like um, shifting between future or past timelines, or even biolocating, as some scriptures have said for other
Hmm.
luminaries in the past have been able to achieve. I've
Hmm.
had clients who have come to me through hypnosis going, I don't know, all of a sudden I was in my kitchen and then all of a sudden I was in my bedroom. And I don't know how that happened. I did it twice. And I'm like,
Yeah.
can you try to replicate it and tell us how you did it so that we can
Hmm.
all learn how to use our Merkabas as portals? Because you
Right.
did it on accident. So there's
Right.
something in there to learn. And I'm constantly trying to follow the leads so that we can all activate our Merkabas and basically be our own portals to whatever reality we want and whatever location we want to go to.
That's my
That's the
question.
leading edge experience that all Buddhas want to eventually get to.
Right. My question for you is how much of it is related to the Merkaba? As I've explored the Merkaba and Dronbala Melchizedek, and learning to spin the Merkaba. Do you think that as we adjust and fine tune and spin the Merkaba in the correct way, that we're opening ourselves to these other geometries and energies around us? Do you think that that's what's going on? That is an interesting thing to explore.
Right, right. Um, so the mandala, everybody has an energy field, and it is
Right.
your mandala, it's your Merkaba, it's your Sri Yantra, it's your yin yang, it's all that.
Hmm.
And the further you go into your personal development and consciousness, and the further that you understand um, the nature of consciousness, the more you are able to navigate and use the tools
Hmm.
to
Okay.
experience the best version and the best life. Because the whole point is just to live in the now and live the best experience
Hmm.
that you have. Because there is no destination, it's all about the journey. So it's
True.
about having the best journey. But for leading edge experiencers who are tapping into consciousness and raising their energy field and navigating realities, now it's like, okay, I know that reality shifts happen. I know that I'm doing it somehow. Now, how do I navigate it to get the best version that it possibly can?
Right.
And that's the age old question that always goes esoteric, especially for me, is because when you shift realities, you're going to come across, and not every reality is going to have a parallel person, set of parents, or parallel, family members or friends.
Hmm.
But when you shift realities, I know for myself and for many of my clients, and I always tell people when they're like, oh, maybe they made it up. And I say, people don't spend thousands of dollars to fly across the country during a pandemic to pay hundreds of dollars more just to make it all up. Okay,
Hmm.
it's a real phenomenon for some people, and they're serious about this because they've looked everywhere and they're not able to get
Right.
assistance or guidance. So majority of reality is not it is most people are not leading edge experiencers, but for leading edge experiencers, this is the hunt for almost the golden key of how do you unlock consciousness?
Right.
How do you unlock reality? So the thing is that the thing that trips most people out is not necessarily seeing the big building or seeing a change in their neighborhood. It is
Hmm.
seeing completely different parallel people with
Right.
completely different history. Have you experienced that yourself?
I'm very, I've met people that I knew from before that were completely different. Uh, I,
And explain that. Explain that.
uh, I had somebody that I went to high school with that was sort of my like enemy. Was my He bullied me, and then when after this happened, I got a phone call from him. And, hey, how you doing? Just you haven't talked in a while, and I was like, we haven't really talked. And he was just the nicest person, and like it was a different person. I was in a different reality, and it was a different person. And so I wanted to explore further, but I didn't want to sound crazy. So I think a couple of times I've met people that were seemingly different by their personalities or behavior, and there was a part of me that kind of held back, like I better not ask too many questions, but I haven't had too many experiences where it was a parallel person. But the way my life was shaped is that I wasn't going to be in that many experiences. So, and I
Mm,
don't know that
right,
I
right.
find that super fascinating, and I would
Yeah, see,
love to
that's
hear
another
more
one
about
to
it.
that's another one to
Yeah.
explore. Have you had any of your shifts be verified by other people?
Ugh. I have, I have not really had too many shifts that most of the time when I've asked about stuff, the people that would talk about it would go, yeah, that's always been like that, or that's always
Uh-huh,
been,
so they're part of that current
they're part of
reality.
that reality. And of course I would ask, I never really found anybody that had shared in the shift, except for the Mandela effect. But that is
That
kind of a
community, yeah, that's
group,
leading edge
that's
experiencers
sort
community.
of a group change. And in my own particular case, that's the only time I've seen that collective change where
All right.
people are becoming aware of it.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, I know for myself, I've had I have parallel parents. And I have friends
wow.
who are in this space who have parallel parents with completely different background histories.
Oh, wow.
And I've have friends who have um, email, chat, um, us, you know, messages that they have saved
Hmm.
about a conversation that they have with another person. That I'll just tell you. I told you this in another interview once, but for an example, like I had a coworker who changed shifts to the shift that I'm in, myself and another friend, another coworker. And she had just started. And I said, well, didn't you already start 2 years ago? And she said, no, I just started today. And I said, are you sure about that? And she said, yes. And I said, I went back through email and I have the email from 2 years ago that said, welcome to the shift. And yeah, and she had explained with timestamp and date that why she changed to the shift. And I also communicated with my coworker and said, do you remember so and so? She just moved to a shift to this shift. And she said, no, she did that a couple years ago. I have Facebook message dating from 2 years ago that she did this. So we showed this to
Oh,
our
wow.
coworker that
Amazing.
we both have physical evidence that she had already made this change in her life 2 years earlier, and this
Oh,
for her is the first time she just did this. So we're like, that is our physical evidence that this is a parallel person. I also have shown a good friend of mine a text or a telephone text message where I saw his name change, and he had bought a house, and I had put in the text, oh, this is going to be, with his last name of the house. And he said he changed his name. He's like, no, my name is this. Get my name right. I'm like, no, your name is this. I've known you for a long time. He's like, no, my name is this. I was like, okay, fine, no problem.
oh,
You
wow.
have you have this different last name, no problem. A little slight variation in your last name. And then a year later, I chat with him through Messenger, and his Facebook and his name reverted back. And I said, oh, what's going on with your last name? He's like, what are you talking about? So I sent him a
Oh,
picture of the text message of where he corrected the name to the other name. And he's like, I don't know what that name is.
that's amazing. That is
So
absolute physical
yeah,
proof,
that's physical proof.
100%.
So and
That
there's
is
a lot
amazing.
of people. I have clients that come in for hypnosis who go, I had a tattoo on my right leg. Now it's on my left leg. What's happening?
Wow.
Or my sister had a client who came in and said, my sister had broken her leg on the right leg because I was there, I watched it. And now all of a sudden, my same sister has the broken leg on the left leg.
Wow.
And she never, so this is a parallel person where something happened in the reality a little bit different, but for some reason she shifted to the higher reality where her sister had broken the other leg, not the leg that she physically remembers being there for. So this phenomenon is happening to many, many people. People aren't talking about it because they don't
Mm-mm.
know who to go to. And
Exactly.
there's nothing in medicine that talks about reality shifts.
There really isn't. No, there's a lot of people out there that I would be surprised if a bunch of people have had similar experience. I would not be surprised. And who are you going to tell?
Mm.
Who are you going to tell?
And what difference does it make?
Right.
Yeah,
Who's going to believe you? Who's going to believe you when you see that new building or that the broken leg, everything that you've mentioned?
right,
Uh,
right.
I'm just jealous because you've had actual physical proof that you can show twice with email. That's great because,
More than
'cause-
that, my
yeah,
husband and I, we verify a lot of things back because usually I jump first and then he jumps second.
then he jumps second. Wow.
He
So,
follows me. He's got to follow his love. So he'll follow my Merkaba through time and space wherever I go. He'll follow. But usually I'd be like, well, um, your parent, or I would say with these people's parents, we remember we did this event, right? And he's like, yeah, yeah. And then we'll go to another event and we will kind of casually fact check and verify, did you do X, Y, and Z? And they're like, no. And we're like, are you sure? And they're like, no. And then we would tell them exactly what happened, what's in their house, where is it placed, da, da, da. And they're like, you've never been to our house. And so we would we know that we're talking about a parallel version of this person in a different reality. We've shifted realities. So the question always for us and for many people who are leading edge experiencers of reality is, one, how did we shift our consciousness to this
mhm,
reality? And
how?
two, is this the higher or lower reality?
Right.
That's the constant gnawing that this
Right.
community is wondering about. And I don't honestly, I have clients and I would put them in hypnosis.
Hmm.
And the oversoul, the consciousness, the stream of consciousness in everybody, experiencing everybody as themselves at the same time, that consciousness continues to say to every single client that I put through hypnosis, same voice, same tone, same personality. Well, it really has no personality, but the same being would typically say, um, they are choosing the reality that fits them, and this is the experience that they choose to have. So,
Wow.
and there is no high or low, right or wrong. It's just basically that, if they're coming in for hypnosis to ask questions to their higher self about career advice, what they should do next, because they're kind of in a stuck situation, the the oversoul will typically tell them, well, these are your options. If you want to do that, follow these steps, be open to
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z. So then they will have more insight of going, oh, I didn't even see it that way. All right, I would try that. And then they will work those steps and it will typically manifest. And it's just basically about experiencing the reality that they want to. But not everybody is going to be able to get a hypnosis session or,
Right.
be in the place where they have the time to sit there and do inner work and focus and all that kind of stuff. So, for people in this space, how can they navigate reality to really get the best experience out of this life as possible? What is your recommendation for that?
Well, we can take what we've learned so far together. And the one thing is that we have control over our reality. So, just start to become aware of your awareness. Start to utilize the power of visualization, start choosing the reality that you want, write it down, think about it, feel it, and then you can, instead of letting the bus drive you, you can drive the bus, because we're moving through these parallel realities. And so side note, the two things that maybe can give us further information, because I feel that, I love that about you, is that you're yearning for more knowledge, just like me, because we're experiencing these reality shifts. In the convoluted universe, Dolores Canyon had also spoken to several oversouls just like you, and there is a chapter about parallel realities that kind of goes into she really goes into the more of the dynamics, and then the law of one material, the raw material. There is it's a channeled work that talks about how the universe works and reincarnation, but there's discussion that we're in this third density, and in this third density, our soul can move through different parallel realities, but just in the third density. And oftentimes, it could be for somebody that needs to quickly learn incarnational lessons quickly, instead of having to live a whole life, that you can be put into a parallel reality for that. Those are the things that come up. All I can say is that we do seem to have some control over it. I think it's very much like riding a motorcycle. You control where you're moving through what you're seeing, and then you can
what you're focusing and feeling.
What you're focusing on that is in front of you is going to be coming towards you, and it's kind of like a wave of these particles that are just wave. You're creating them as they're going along. So you might see shifts. And so the best thing that we can do is try to harness it. It's like art, kind of. It's not a perfect science, or it would be a little different, because sometimes unexpected things happen, or the energy's not there. It's a constant learning process. But as we do this, as we focus on this, we learn and get better and better at it, and we just need to drive the bus ourselves. We need to
right. Because I'm sure you've read the same books as I have, because I've read every single thing I can get my hands off on parallel realities. I've gone through all Hinduism. I've gone through the Vedas. I've gone through Buddhism. I've been through all of it, trying to find the secret sauce.
I'm looking at my mirror right now. So.
This is the stuff that fuels my engine. I'm not, all the other stuff is malleable, but in Buddhism, they say it takes 1% of humanity to change reality, because that 1%, the high vibe percent, is the one that dreams the dream that everybody lives.
Right, I could see
we
that.
are the ones that dreams the dreams that everybody lives. And typically what they found in meditation research, when they research advanced monks or nuns, when they meditate, they go into gamma wave frequency, which is a very high frequency, where they change it. It's a frequency where they have a higher hertz, kind of like 60 or 80 or 100 hertz. And we know in hertz, when you think of picture frames, it's just a higher resolution TV. Low resolution TV is a cheaper TV that has a lower hertz. The higher, more crisp image, the better pictures, better colors, whatever, are in the higher resolution, 60, 120 hertz, whatever. And when they did meditation research, that's what they found with these advanced meditators, is that they are in these higher hertz frequencies. And so they're seeing clearer, crisper pictures. And in meditation research, they found that it really only takes 1% of people in any specific area to have a higher frequency, and then everything else has no choice but to match up to or to change. So like when they do worldwide meditations, they would feel that, and it would change and lower the crime rate, and people would be a little bit more at peace, etc. But I think Dr. David R. Hawkins' book series, he said it went up to 3%. So it's becoming a little more trendy to be conscious. And maybe that's the reason why we're getting more leading edge experiencers. It's because it's starting to permeate.
Yeah, great point. I think the more people, the more elastic the reality around us.
Exactly.
We're experiencing other people's reality shifts at the same time.
I think so.
It's interesting because Robert Anton Wilson and Timothy Leary spoke about the reality tunnel. The neurological tunnel that we're in, where really we only ever know our own reality tunnel, the way that the consciousness works. But I tend to think that we are sharing a reality with everybody else. And so what's we're the more people that are consciousness, then we're going to start seeing more and more shifts, maybe before, because so few people were in
Yeah,
the process of creating reality that it
right.
wasn't as obvious. That's a great point.
Yeah,
I
it was
think that,
very small. Like when I
yeah.
was young, when I was I'm 41 right now, but when I was young, it was a very small amount of people who would have reality shifts. It was just so I just
Hmm.
used it for myself. And then around the 2012 awakening ceremonies that many Buddhist monks and indigenous tribes worldwide were doing
Hmm.
it in 2010 to 2012. Um, After that, a little bit more people around that time were started doing. So I'm like, ooh,
Hmm.
more people. Okay, I thought it was just me. All right, oh, somebody to talk to. Not so much, but I did hook up with Cynthia Sue Larson, and
Oh,
she
awesome. She's
really
amazing.
yeah she but a lot of people weren't communicating with. That was when her early days, they weren't communicating her yet
Hmm.
because there wasn't as many,
Right.
but it's starting to happen more exponentially and more people. And the Mandela Effect community and those logos and stuff, those
Hmm.
games that we play are teasing at people to kind of wake further into the experience and kind of, be more high vibe. So I really think that, um, like in Buddhism, we are the dreamers of the dream.
I love.
And the thing is that, and I know this in hypnosis when I hypnotize my clients, the oversoul says over and over again, people need to filter their brain because they're putting too much crap in there.
Yeah.
We, we open our consciousness to too much gunk, and then we manifest out of the crud that we let in our brains and they
Yeah.
would let in our heart. And so we really need to be more conscious of you- we're not an open 7-Eleven that takes on all the junk, because then whatever
Hmm.
you have in your house is what you develop from.
Yeah. What we
So
are, what we eat.
we
And
are what we
so,
eat, we are what we watch, we are what we feel, we
right.
are what we learn, and a lot of people are like allowing all the train wrecks and chaos and
Hmm.
all this junk into their self, and so it slows down their vibration, it slows down their manifestation abilities, it slows down those gamma wave, high brain waves, high heart rate
So true.
abilities, because they're carrying around a lot of this junk
Hmm.
from the external world that doesn't really belong to them. They don't really believe in that, but they were just
Right.
kind of,
It
you know,
becomes a feedback loop too.
it
It does.
does.
They see it, it becomes in their reality, they see it and they become, and then the only way they can break it is this awareness that you and I are talking about. Otherwise, you're just going to constantly be see it, then it's in your reality, see it, and then to break that point, it's tough. And it's not going to be 100%. What do you think
Yeah.
that what do you think the peak's going to be? 20-30%? Could there be a point in time where, and can you imagine what the world will be when 30% are really starting to play with the dynamics of reality? Is that
I
is
don't
that the
know. I
that we
don't
talk
know,
about?
Brian.
Is
We're
that the
we're
point where there's a threshold where everybody's creating their reality? I don't know.
well, I can this is a new experience. Okay, I can only tell you from Buddhism and my Hmong indigenous beliefs. This is a
Hmm.
new experience, okay? And there are leading edge experiencers of consciousness and reality.
Yeah.
And we are learning and we are dreaming the pictures. And everybody else gets pulled along whether they like it or not, but some people are not going to be so friendly as they get pulled along. They might fight a little bit, so I kind of keep away sometimes,
Right.
for my own safety and sanity. But the indigenous belief and the Buddhist belief is off of the golden age of humanity, which
Right.
which we're in the fifth dimension. We're going further into it, but it's still early on, so you can still choose to go back and forth, whatever,
Right.
so we can talk about it another time. I've done many interviews on this, but
Yeah.
what eventually happens is, in the belief system, the higher vibe people and the people who are higher vibe and wanting to work on that reality split
Hmm.
off from the rest, and they become another species, a very
Right.
spiritual enlightened society. And Dr. David R. Hawkins, in his book, in his latter years, he was asking questions about parallel realities, and he found that
Hmm.
there was an offshoot of humanity, that he called in his book Homo Spiritus,
Oh,
which
wow.
is a humanity of highly enlightened, highly conscious, high vibe people who are able to this is in his book Through the Map of Consciousness work and
Right.
his latter years, who are able to harness all the six senses like biolocation, teleportation, all these
Right.
different things. They have no need really for technology. They still have technology and they're very highly advanced, but they really, it's almost like Lemuria 5.0.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's the golden age of humanity that in Buddhism they talk about.
Right. I think it's talked about in almost every religious
Yeah.
text. And I mentioned the law of one material. They're talking about it too, that we are moving into the fourth density or the fifth dimension is what they, some people refer to it. But it's this higher reality where we're harnessing the light, and it's sort of almost a group consciousness on some level. It's a
Hmm.
different level of consciousness.
It's a
Uh,
different level, but what I think and what I strive for is to figure out the tools and the
right.
steps to know how to program it into our being more like if we know if we want to lose weight, we got to get on the treadmill and we got to eat right. All
Right.
right,
Right.
simple formula, for the most part. But we do not know how to be one with consciousness all the time, and then how to navigate parallel realities to the reality where we're all highly activating our Merkabas
Right.
and doing all the things that the luminaries in the past have done. And we are learning with each other from each other. And
Right.
these are leading edge experiencers like myself going, how do you do it?
Right.
You
Well,
tell me
my
your
question to
tricks.
you then is, have you experimented with the plate or plat? Have you heard about or used or have you heard about that? If
You mean
not,
plank?
the plate, Plait is how it's spelled. Um, reality transurfing, advanced reality transurfing has a concept I've talked about for about a year on my channel, and it's a more specific explanation of what's happening when you're loading up and moving into new realities, and they call it the plate. It's in yoga. It is there's this energy stream that comes from the back of the head.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we know, there's a lot of different religious that talk about something going on behind us,
Hmm.
but it's imagined as like if you had a braid that kind of, and you feel it between your shoulders. A lot of times when people feel like a big shift is happening, they feel a sensation between their shoulders, and so they talk about it as a plate or plat, and it's kind of just a, a limb like that. When somebody cuts off their hand, they still feel it. So
Hmm.
we have
Yeah.
this limb that maybe it's in our memory, and you load up the film frame from the back. There's literally and they're seeing it, and so a lot of people have had huge success. It is a Russian technique, so a lot of the books that have been written about it are in Russian. Some have been
Hmm.
badly translated. There, what Tufti didn't say and Tufti the priestess are the two, but there's these amazing discussions. People are starting to see there's a process. You're loading a reality up onto the tip. And so like in Carlos Castaneda talked about in Toltec wisdom, the assemblage point. And the idea is we're talking about realities. Another level of that is that we're actually in multiple different realities at the same time.
Hmm.
We're in the reality of, I went to school in Wyoming, and I went to college here. I
Right.
dated this. All these things are imagine them all like a string of realities that attach. If you had some heightened senses at some point behind us, and so
Yeah.
this energy braid, it comes to a single point, and Toltecs would say it's the assemblage point, and Carlos Castaneda had these exercises to move the assemblage point, which would cause you to jump into a reality. Some of the I think that the Yaqui Indians and so they would use this, and so they're starting to say this is like a technology that we sort of have that we have never used, and the reason that it's hard for people to use is, uh, it's a muscle that when you have a really flabby muscle that you've never
Yeah.
used
It's
your
a
whole
spiritual
life,
muscle.
right? So I'm just wondering if
Hmm.
you've ever heard anything about that, or that anything similar or related to,
Mm-mm.
in terms of reality shifting.
No, I just know the mandalas.
Right.
I just know the mandalas and
Hmm.
working with your Merkaba.
Right. Right. And so they're definitely they might both be the same thing. There might be
It's all tied. It's all the
it's
same thing. It's part
unconscious
just different ways
process,
of seeing it.
right? I
You
think that,
know.
right.
Yeah. In my book, Buddhist Mandalas, I have shown the science, explained the science of my 20-year research project to show that all the sacred geometry is people, it's people, everybody's energy, and their
Hmm.
energy is what takes them from one reality to another in their
Right.
Merkabas. So I'm not going to get too much into that, but it's in that book. But so I'm familiar with the Merkabas, and I'm definitely open to other traditions that may have a piece of the puzzle. But I
Right.
think as we get further into this and more people have reality shift, we're going to figure it out together. Now,
Right.
the other thing that comes up in my tradition of Buddhism is that we are going to get to a point where we transcend survival and we
Hmm.
house and feed and shelter everybody. And a lot of the monks and nuns are working on, and high vibe people are working on their next incarnation to incarnate as tycoons.
Hmm.
So
Right.
because politics is not going to make a difference in this
Right.
reality or that reality, that really doesn't matter because it's not where the changes are. The changes are through the business, and
Through
they need
financial
high,
resources.
yeah, and they need
Right.
high vibe. We need high vibe, enlightened tycoons who
Right.
don't give a lick about giving $1 billion out to make sure everybody has free energy, free water, make sure that
Right.
everybody's fed and housed. They don't give a lick because they're working on their spiritual development.
I think you're
Because
making a
all
great
the
point. Yeah.
yeah, all the eternal stuff, external stuff is going to eventually be addressed.
Hmm.
And so when all the physical stuff is addressed and no one is watching or evaluating their value as a person based on how much money they make, then what is left is a society that's going, how can we shift reality? How
Right.
can we manifest the highest reality? Let's work on our spiritual development. Let's work on consciousness. And now we're functioning as an enlightened society where other enlightened societies that are already high vibe, or
Hmm.
what some people would call aliens, are going to be wanting to communicate. And that's when we make that connection to interstellar galactic humanity, the
Oh yeah.
offshoot of humanity.
Well
But
said.
yeah, which I would love to interview a sci-fi writer so they can just sit there and go, okay, let's gonna, because all
Right.
the sci-fi stuff is the stuff that manifests. All the
Right.
doomsayers and prophecy people, none of that manifests because people
Hmm.
don't want that low vibe reality. What typically manifests is those high vibe sci-fi people who are dreaming these things. They
Hmm.
are the
Yeah.
dreamers, and then we make it happen. So if we think it,
Hmm.
then we will find a way to make it happen. And so I really think we're we're jumping many experiences
Right.
ahead, but it will the, in the future they'll look back and go, how did they figure that all out? And they'll
Hmm.
go to the leading edge experiencers of parallel realities. How did
Right.
they figure it out? How did they
Well,
get to the point where they all like learn how to activate the Merkabas and be geolocate like Buddha and teleport through time and space like, Kuan Yin? How did they,
right.
how do we do that? How do they use technology to go from planet A to planet B, whatever.
I'm
And
so
just,
excited to,
it,
it's
yeah,
exciting,
it is exciting.
I think you make a great point. One of the problems spiritually we've had is there's a dynamic where once you reach a certain level of spirituality, materialism kind of is irrelevant and you're not worried about making money. It's not important. But at the same time, when you're at that high vibe, that money is an energy, a resource that you can use to change the world around you. So there's going to
Yeah,
be a shift in thinking
we
where
have to
it's
shift the way
okay
we
for me to be
think.
prosperous because I
Oh,
can use this money to change the world. It's a
yeah.
reprogramming that will occur. Even though it doesn't matter to me, I still want to tap in because I can control my reality and we can gain the resources now. We don't become tycoons in our next life. We can become tycoons
Exactly.
now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's already tycoons now who they're working on it, but they need to get into their the higher consciousness.
Right.
And when they get into the higher consciousness, their philanthropy work will run at a accelerated higher level that they can never imagine, because now consciousness is steering it.
All right. I agree.
So,
So
but yeah, it's very interesting. And I, you know, if you find anything new for how we how
I'll
we
let you
navigate
know.
realities, let me know, because I think I've read everything you've read.
Ah,
And
well,
then
I
some
am
more.
so excited. This is one of the funnest conversations I've had. It's so nice uh, to a soul that's been through the same things I have. And so thank you so much for having me on. It was
Oh my
wonderful. I
God, yeah,
appreciate it
definitely.
so
Now,
much.
is there a last message that you want to, because I know, I mean, you and I are we're just sitting here looking at each other going, huh. We're just, our consciousness is being piqued,
Right,
and we're gonna have to do a follow-up on this. But
for sure.
what last message do you have for people who are leading edge experiencers of reality shifts?
If you're a leading edge experiencer, realize that the majority of people around you, there's a lot of people in this world that have given up hope, that are depressed, that don't understand this, and you alone as a teacher can go out and change those people. And if we can just at a minimum bring people hope and show them their abilities and show them the power to create reality, just by just that teaching and just by bringing this awareness, we can bring hope and we can change the world. And we are the key. I think that leading edge experiencers all around the world, once you reach that certain point where you understand the power to create reality, our next step is to take this. Don't just hold it to yourself. It's a wonderful thing, but take this knowledge and tell as many people as you can. Spread the word, plant it like a seed, make it a virus, let it spread everywhere. And as people learn this, I can't wait to see how the world changes when people really tune in and align with this information. Then we will all be free. It will free us from the limitations of this third density that we're in into something amazing beyond anything that you and I can even imagine. The possibilities are endless.
Right, right. Yeah. When you get into, like I always say in interviews, when you get into consciousness and
Mhm,
you integrate consciousness into your everyday, and you are navigating reality, because
mhm.
that's what consciousness does, it completely changes your experience. Awakening ascension, that's just entry level stuff. Parallel reality shifting and
Yeah,
learning how to navigate and learning how to change reality, that's next level. Next level.
multidimensional reality
M-
creation is where it's at.
Yes, multidimensionality, multidimensional yourselves.
Mhm.
Before I close this, I want to ask you, have you had vivid recall of your parallel lives?
In dream sequences, I've had, as I've tuned in and become more lucid and try to become more aware of my dreams, I have had vivid recall of my parallel lives. I've made it an intention. I've gone into, like, I want to dream, I want to have vivid recall of this life, and I've done that. I've had these dreams where these amazing experiences that clearly I did not experience in this timeline. And then the following day after the dream, I have these little flashes and bits of memory, as if it's real. And so uh,
Yeah.
it's really exciting.
Yeah, like you said earlier, there, and I agree with you on this too, that everything's happening all at the same time. You just pick which channel you want to tune into.
Right.
I've had realities where I'm married to different people. I've
Hmm.
also had realities where I'm experiencing a quote quote future timeline as a space farmer over Earth.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
We're yeah, we make it. We make it.
Oh, good.
We make
Well,
it.
I think one of the things that people don't know about dreams is that our soul loves to dream because that's when it explores all these realities. When we're sleeping and dreaming, a lot of times we have these weird dreams. Really, it's not a dream. It's just moving and accessing a portion of the space of variations of the different realities. And that's what we're doing. Now, we can become more aware of it when we're awake, when we explore these
Right.
And the Akashic record will become a collection of all the realities. There's going to be a point where it's going to be more than just what has already happened in this reality. It's going to be all the realities. It's going to be this amazing thing that people can access.
I know it definitely opens up a different thing. Sometimes I tell my husband about my parallel lives, and he gets jealous of the other spouses.
Well, I get that.
So, I'm like, stop it, and he also gets jealous of his parallel selves.
Right.
This is so funny.
Well,
so we just play around with it.
What I purposely try to in meditation, as I do in my meditation, I want to access the most prosperous version of myself. And I have the most amazing experience. I want to access the one that finds the greatest loves. And I have these vivid experiences in that, or the one where I'm able to be of service to the most people. And when you do that, when you make that your intention, even if you never experience it, you can experience it right now in this moment. You can go, and the better you get at it, the more fine-tuned you get at, you can experience all these realities right now.
Yeah. Oh, such a great topic. I just love this. I can go on and on about this, Brian. I mean, 5 cocktails later, I'm still like, so
I get that.
let's trade experiences. But Brian, it's been refreshing to chat with another high vibe soul about a topic that is so dear to me. It's very dear and advanced in Buddhism. And I know we've presented some profound insights for leading edge experiencers of reality shifts. So thank you for a very fun interview. And for everybody else, for more information about Brian's offerings, just go to his website, which is therealityrevolution.com. And that's the name of his book as well. You can also find his books on Amazon. And again, thank you kindly for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, blessings.
Thank you so much. I had such a great time. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the 5th dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the 5th dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.